Good morning. Well, I forgot to bring some books home to be able to read during the break. So I broke into my box to see what kind of books I have around here. And I decided that today we would read Tale of Three Trees, a traditional folktale retold by Angela Elwell Hunt and illustrated by Tim Jonquet. Jonquet. I don't know, but I tried, right? So, are you ready? Let's do it. Here we go. It says, once upon a mountaintop, three little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. There they are. See the three little trees? Hi, three little trees. Do you do that? Do you sit there and go, what do I want to do when I grow up? Let's see what happens with them. The first little tree looked up at the twinkling stars like diamonds above him. I want to hold treasure, he said. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I will be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world. That's a nice thought, huh? The second little tree looked out at the small stream trickling by on its way to the ocean. I want to be a strong sailing ship, he said. I want to travel mighty waters and carry powerful kings. I will be the strongest ship in the world. The third little tree looked down into the valley below where busy men and busy women worked in a busy town. I don't want to leave this mountaintop at all, she said. I want to grow so tall that when people stop and look at me, they will raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I will be the tallest tree in the world. That's pretty cool, huh? It's good to want to draw people to God, right? To be something that when somebody looks at you, they see God. That's cool. Let's see what happens with them. Years passed. The rains came. The sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. One day, 3 woodcutters climbed the mountain. Dum, 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 dum. There they are. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, "This tree is beautiful. It's perfect for me." With a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell. Now I shall be made into a beautiful chest, thought the first tree. I shall hold wonderful treasure. The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, "This tree is strong. It is a perfect tree for me." With a swoop of his shining axe, the second tree fell. Now I shall sell mighty waters, thought the second tree. I shall be a strong ship fit for kings. And the third tree felt her heart sink when the last woodcutter looked her way. She stood straight and tall and pointed bravely to heaven. But the woodcutter never even looked up. "Any kind of tree will do for me," he muttered. With a swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell. Poor third tree, huh? The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought him to the carpenter's shop, but the busy carpenter was not thinking about treasure chests. Instead, his work-worn hands fashioned the tree into a feed box for animals. Oh. The once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or filled with treasure. He was covered with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry animals. Oops. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took him to a shipyard. But no mighty sailing ships were being made that day. Instead, the once strong tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat. Too small and too weak to sail an ocean or even a river, he was taken to a little lake. Every day he brought in loads of dead, smelly fish. Well, that's not what he wanted either, right? But he is feeding people, right? They're both actually feeding. One's feeding animals and the other's feeding people. But it's not what they thought. Sometimes things are not what we think, right? But let's see what happens. The third tree was confused when the woodcutter cut her into strong beams and left her in the lumber yard. What happened? The once tall tree wondered. All I ever wanted to do was stay on the mountaintop and point to God. Sometimes we think, well, what I want to do, it's a good thing. Why don't I get what I want if it's a good thing, right? Perhaps there's a better thing. Let's find out what happens. Many, many days and nights passed. The three trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby in the feed box. I wish I could make a cradle for him, her husband whispered. The mother squeezed his hand and smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and sturdy wood. This manger is beautiful, she said, and suddenly the first tree knew he was holding the greatest treasure of all. Look at that. What is it? Baby. Do you know what baby that is? Baby Jesus. Now let's see what happens to the second one. One evening, a tired traveler and his friends crowded into an old fishing boat. The traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out into the lake. Soon, a thundering and thrashing storm arose. The little tree shuddered. He knew he did not have the strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and rain. The tired man awakened. He stood up, stretched out his hand, and said, "Peace." The storm stopped as quickly as it had begun, and suddenly the second tree knew he was carrying the King of heaven and earth. Who's the King of heaven and earth? Jesus. See, so far, everything that they wanted, they ended up doing greater things than what they ever even dreamed, right? One Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were yanked from the forgotten woodpile. She flinched as she was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. She shuddered when the soldiers nailed a man's hands and feet to her. She felt ugly and harsh and cried. Do you know who that is? That's Jesus, huh? So she was made into the cross that he hung and died on for our sins, for us. So that's pretty special for her to be able to be a part of that, right? She didn't like what happened to him, but it was for us, right? And in the end, what happens? Let's find out. But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose and the earth trembled with joy beneath her, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. It had made the first tree beautiful. It had made the second tree strong. And every time people thought of the third tree, they would think of God. Look at that. Because what happened on the third day? What happened on Sunday? Jesus rose from the dead in victory over death for us. How cool is that? And what happened to these little trees? That was better than being the tallest tree in the world. So what happened to these trees was way better than they could have ever imagined, right? They thought, oh, I want to be this. Oh, I want to do this. And those were great things. But God had something better planned for them. And he has something better planned for us than what we could even imagine too. We just need to make sure that we live for him, right? Well, I hope you liked our story. I love you.